Good afternoon. This is Matthew Blair with Corcoran Partners. I'm a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors and the Policy Council. I want to thank you and welcome the viewers for tuning in to the Tampa Bay Chamber's 2022 Virtual Candidate Forum Series. The Tampa Bay Chamber focuses on policy, not politics. And while we don't make endorsements, the forum ensures members and the business community is informed on where the candidates stand on issues that are important to them. And today, we're excited to have candidates for Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners, District 7, here with us. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Kimberley Overman and Joshua Wostal. Thanks for joining us both.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and kick this off and give deference to Commissioner Overman. We're going to ask, with just under 2 months from Election Day, could you give us a brief, in 2 minutes or less, update on your campaign and what message you want to deliver to voters in this now final stretch? And Commissioner Overman, and then Joshua will come to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity to participate today. As your current county-wide commissioner, in other words, everybody that lives in Hillsborough County, I've been serving for the last 4 years. I have the distinct pleasure of being able to continue the work that we've started in 2018 and 19, to continue working on fighting for our communities, for business owners, and partnering with the Chamber as well as the many entities that you do business with on many of the issues that are part of your platform. Matter of fact, I think I work on all of them, given the role that I have as the chair of the Board of County Commission, the chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board, a member of your Military Advisory Council, a commission on the Commission on Human Trafficking, serving on the Transportation Management area, as well as the TPO, or the Transportation Planning Organization, as well as the Economic Development Council. Gives me the opportunity to play a part in leading our efforts to build strong communities, build strong businesses, and make sure that we're addressing the strong community needs and family needs of Hillsborough County. And I love this job, and I have every intention of keeping it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Wostal, your 2-minute thoughts. Give us your update on the campaign and what message you'd like to deliver to voters in this final stretch.
Yeah, I think that the voters' message is clear, that during record high inflation, the past 2 years of mismanagement from the county, them specifically attacking businesses, wanting to impose heavy-handed policies that would negatively impact them, specifically saying things that they want to quote unquote send messages and impose fines on businesses that were struggling to get by during now record high inflation. Costs of doing business on every level have risen. Families simply don't want to pay more money. They don't want to pay more taxes. And I think that we've gotten to this place by too much of a heavy-handed approach by the county, that they're operating in all of these different facets when they can't even improve basic infrastructure. And that basic infrastructure is what will support everyone in a more vibrant community for both families and businesses, which will then, of course, attract higher quality candidates that want to live in our community, and then, of course, retain them because it's a high standard of living for Hillsborough County. And I think that we need to bring back the county to a realistic level of saying, hey, you need to be able to improve the basic infrastructures of our county first before you start playing games and all these other facets that you obviously can't handle your one primary job of infrastructure improvement.
Thanks, Josh, for your thoughts and perspective. We're grateful for that. We're going to go ahead and throw this next question first to you, Joshua, and then come to you, Kimberly. And that question is, please tell us the 3 most pressing issues the Board of County Commissioners will face, and how, if you're elected, you plan to help address those issues over the next couple of years.
The most pressing issue is going to be, I believe, the impending unfortunate recession that's definitely going to hit sometime around November. We need to make sure that we're resilient, and that goes back to me pointing at making sure that our budget is transparent and that we are clear in understanding on how much money is actually needed to run this county, how much taxes is needed to realistically manage the infrastructures, because we're going to see impacts on our families where the county is going to have to adjust. On top of that, you see record movement and growth to the county. I think that you have to have that accountability and making sure that the money that's being taxed is being spent to improve the infrastructure, not on personal projects owned by the commissioners. It needs to go to improving that infrastructure that will improve the livelihood of everything and of everyone in the county. And I think third, it's just that you have to fix the roads. I mean, it's the most, I just on 2 days ago did $3,000 of damage to my car. I have a loaner right now. I'm going to go get it from the shop today. And a $3,000 bill is something that can set an average family in Hillsborough County back for months. And we just have to improve the roads first.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, same question. If elected, what are the 3 most pressing issues you feel the commission will face, and how do you plan to help address those issues?
Hillsborough County is actually sitting in a very good place because lots and lots of folks want to live here. The challenge is the prior administration, not the current, but the prior administration had not charged sufficient infrastructure fees associated with the development that was occurring at the time. And we were not growing our communities in an efficient and close manner where the cost of building that infrastructure could be affordable to the developers that were developing and the families that were purchasing their homes. Consequently, we have brought forth increase in the mobility fees and impact fees in order to have future development paid for, so that we have the ability to actually continue to grow and deal with the increase in population. But we have also brought to the voters the opportunity to invest in our future, to make sure that we're covering the cost of the past delinquencies and investing in our infrastructure. That has to be made in order to do several things. One, to create safe streets so that people can get around and can actually get to work, should they choose to live in Hillsborough County and actually work in Hillsborough County. 2, to be able to afford the homes that are being built or the homes that are here now, because transportation and affordable housing are clearly the key issues and challenges that Hillsborough County residents are facing right now. So we are working on using every penny that we have that's allocated towards affordable housing, towards developing affordable housing and building strong communities, building them in areas where we can afford to build the infrastructure to support those new communities, and also sustaining communities that have already been built to make sure that they are actually retained for the long term. But without the infrastructure bill that we've just put forth to taxpayers for election, for a vote in November, we will actually forfeit the state and federal fund matching dollars that are available to help invest in our community. By passing up this opportunity to invest now, we will lose our transit agency in 2027, given that it does not have the budget in order to be able to survive. And that will hurt over 100,000 residents of Hillsborough County that do not have access to a car or do not have access to be able to drive. Our policies in the past have largely been car-centric, and consequently, we have many individuals that are unable to support themselves or their family or economically compete for jobs. Those are the most important parts. In addition to that, our military base is having difficulty finding housing for their personnel. We have been working on that workforce housing project in order to be able to allow those that work and serve our nation an effective opportunity to live close enough to the base in order to protect our national security. So working on creating jobs, increasing workforce, and taking advantage of the fact that we have a balanced budget. We spend money on the things that invest in our future and take care of our residents, and then partner with private enterprise where opportunities lie in order to be able to serve our residents well. The key here is that we have not in the past charged enough infrastructure. We have a deficit in funding for past infrastructure delinquencies that need to be addressed. And that's what the referendum this fall is for.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we're going to go ahead and come back to you, and then Joshua to you. So you're starting to see we're back and forth in an even and balanced way here. You both mentioned it. That is transportation and roads. That's our next question. So the county has a transportation referendum before it on the November ballot. Quickly, Do you support the 1% transportation sales surtax to fund roadway improvements, safety projects, and expanded transit options? And we've got an if not, well, how do you suggest funding it? And if you do, what projects do you think should be prioritized? So let's take this in parts. Do you, yes or no, support the 1% referendum? Commissioner, yes or no?
Yes, I brought it forth.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And Joshua, yes or no, do you support the 1% transportation sales surtax? No, you don't. Okay, so with that said, Commissioner, we'll come back to you. And the question is, if you said yes, and you did, what projects do you think Hillsborough should be prioritizing with those dollars?
Clearly, we need to make sure we prioritize those projects that qualify for state and federal funding. That gives us the opportunity to get in line and to compete for those grant dollars. Typically, transportation funding, when we do partner with state and federal resources, requires that the county has maybe up to 25% of local dollars in order to compete for any of the federal infrastructure budgets that have been approved by the Biden administration. We will forfeit being able to actually qualify for any of those federal grants to invest in our infrastructure deficits that we have by not having this thing pass. So key issues, we need obviously to make sure that we preserve our pavement that's already down, preserve the roads that are there, invest in sidewalks as well as intersection improvements in order to increase safety and to address our congestion issues. But we also need to make sure that we have a transit system that actually works. I'm not talking about rail. The opponents of this keep saying this is a rail tax. It's not a rail tax. It's in order to invest in transit so that people can get around, buying more buses, operating and hiring more operators and mechanics that actually live and work in our community to work on the buses, to be able to actually make sure that we have a transit system that can show up every 15 to 20 minutes instead of once an hour for 3/4 of our transit resources. And to make sure that we have an opportunity to help our military get to the base efficiently, as well as the 60% of those that come to our community to enjoy Hillsborough County that actually pay for the bulk of the sales tax.
Thanks, Commissioner. Joshua, we're coming to you. You said no, you don't support the 1% transportation sales tax. Since you don't, how do you suggest we fund the many transportation needs we have? Obviously, you mentioned roads as one of your top 3 priorities. How do you suggest we fund those transportation needs?
Yeah, I think that the county actually already had a plan back all the way through before 2009 to fund these transportation needs. And then that plan was kind of just basically disappeared. And that money is there. It's just being spent and captured into the CIP and other programs and spent in areas that it wasn't intended to be spent. Now in 2022, pet projects that I've talked about and beaten that bush down. If we don't have the money to improve critical infrastructures, we don't have the money to dole out to privately owned corporations that have CEOs that have that make over $1 million a year, right? There's loose money in the budget, and we need to reprioritize that loose money and really dig down and see what programs can be cut to improve infrastructure that would improve the livelihood of everyone. I do support a robust bus system around the metropolitan areas. The commissioner said that it would put out 100,000 riders, and that's just, I don't know how that'd be true since the survey showed that less than 2% of the county rides the bus. I do believe, though, again, that we should have a robust bus system around the dense metropolitan cores, but expanding it out and trying to make it work all the way down in areas like Apollo Beach and Waimama and Sun City Center and get a bus all the way to TPA is just unrealistic to ever be an efficient mechanism for taxpayers' dollars. So I think that's the difference, is making sure that what we're doing with future money is targeted and will be effective rather than the very ineffective cost inhibitive HART system that we have right now.
Very different positions on that issue. Thank you for both of you answering that and answering it very directly. We appreciate that. The next question up deals with another issue you both identified as a priority, and that's affordable housing. Affordable housing advocates show up in large numbers to Board of County Commission meetings, and they highlight some staggering numbers indicating we have an affordable housing crisis in our community. Do you think we have an affordable housing crisis? And if so, what policy measures or funding mechanisms do you believe should be in place to address it? Forgive me, I think we're coming to you, Joshua, on that next question.
Yeah, I've said this before, the government has never once and will never ever create affordable housing. The government only creates unaffordable housing, which is seen through every economic step. The more money that they spend, the more of a burden it becomes on our families, and thus the more cost it is going to be in a waterfall effect for those housing needs. So the more that the county now agrees at a local level to spend on quote unquote affordable housing, it will then make it unaffordable for some other family to live and support themselves. What you need is more controlled government to release the restraints on the housing industry that will, like in every free market opportunity, reduce the cost of the housing.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, coming to you again. Do you believe we have an affordable housing crisis? And if you believe we do, what policy measures or funding mechanisms should be in place to address it, do you believe?
Thank you for the question. I absolutely believe we're in an affordable housing crisis. Largely, we have a large number of people that are paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. Part of that's due to the speculation of investors coming in and buying properties prior to giving the opportunity for a homeowner to actually own that home. They have great amounts of capital. They have the ability to go in with cash, and they're stripping the opportunity of home ownership in Hillsborough County in a large way. However, what we've been doing to address that issue is not only maximizing the use of the Sadowski funds, which unfortunately have been swept by 50%, but we're using those monies to, as much as possible, in order to partner with home builders and developers for creating housing in areas that make sense, close to urban areas, close to transit lines, in areas where the density and the infrastructure already exists, in order to be able to provide housing that is affordable for our workforce, our teachers, our first responders, for our military, for the folks that in our service industry that are so desperate for housing, because having people that don't have a place to live, that are at risk of losing their children, is not a game I'm willing to play. The key element too is the things that we've put into place over the last couple of years in order to protect homeowners and tenants. For example, we've distributed a significant amount of money in emergency rental assistance to help people stay in their homes. Sometimes landlords won't take the money, and that creates displacement. But where they have participated, we've been able to stabilize homes. We've developed an eviction mitigation program in order to make sure that tenants have the ability to participate in the legal process when they are at risk of being evicted because the landlord just wanted to rent it to somebody else. And the state prohibits us from having rental control. But we also created several other opportunities by creating a local Hope Housing Trust that puts $10 million each year of our general revenue dollars in towards developing affordable housing. I launched the effort to put a community land trust in place in order to allow for homes to be built where there is the assurance that middle income individuals have a place to live. And we've developed a down payment assistance program with the Affordable Housing Finance Authority, or the Housing Finance Authority, in order to help first-time home buyers get into their homes. Hillsborough currently has a 50% renters rate. 50% of our households are largely renters right now. And that number, it does cause problems in communities with that allows for a challenge to maintain strong, healthy communities. So we're looking for ways that we can create greater opportunities for home ownership, and where we're using density and changes in our account plan and our land use in order to build homes in the right place, whether that be multifamily, townhomes, garden villas, any of the above, in areas where it makes sense to put housing so that workforce can be very close to where people live.
Thank you again, both of you. Very different thoughts on addressing the issue, and we're grateful for you highlighting those. The next question, baseball. We'll be trying to keep this one a bit brief. Do you support community efforts to keep the Tampa Bay Rays in the region? And if you're elected, what would be your vision for financing a ballpark in Hillsborough County if that's the preferred location? And so, Commissioner, we'll come to you first, and then to you, Joshua.
Right now we find if we study what's happening with our sports teams right now, they return a significant investment to the community. There's a great deal of jobs and taxable income that comes back to the community for reinvestment in the community. However, that is challenging. So I do support efforts to keep the Rays in the community. How that is going to be paid for is challenging. I think it's critically important that the benefactors of investing in anything that would create an opportunity for the Rays to stay be largely the responsibility of the league. But where we could use funding tools or financing tools to help the team and the efforts and the revenues pay for that investment is a critical opportunity for working together on this. But I'm hesitant to suggest that taxpayer money actually build a stadium at this point, because does not seem to fall in my priority list in terms of how to grow our community and take care of our families and businesses locally.
Thank you, Commissioner. Joshua? I'll restate the question for you again. Baseball, do you support the community efforts to keep the Rays in the region? And if you're elected, what is your vision for financing a ballpark if Hillsborough County is the preferred location?
Yeah, I think that it depends on your definition of community efforts in this regard. I am in no way in support of the community funding in any way a baseball stadium. You look at what happened with the Bucks Stadium. That owner now owns Manchester United, the biggest and most expensive soccer/football team in the world. And a lot of that opportunity was created off the backs of the Hillsborough County taxpayers. So I think that there's no more time for local county taxes to be subsidizing billionaires anymore in Hillsborough County. We did that, it happened, and we need to move on from it. Whether or not there's some help for a location in the area that we can help facilitate it, as long as it doesn't become a burden onto the taxpayers, then I would absolutely support them as a community leader. But once it becomes to where a heavy burden needs to be shifted onto the families of Hillsborough County, that's when I would turn around and say no.
All right, thank you. So I think this is an area where you've just agreed, perhaps the first time in the conversation. That's what I'm hearing. No taxpayer support is what it sounds like for a new facility in Hillsborough County. If I've misstated that, do so by indication. Nope. Okay, thank you. We're going to move to a couple more substantive questions and then some wrap-up questions. Public-private partnerships. In your view, what opportunities exist for the private sector to partner with the county to address Hillsborough's most pressing issues? And Joshua, we're going to come to you and then to you, Commissioner.
Your microphone briefly turned into a robot for me, but
I'll restate it. I hope you heard this. In your view, what opportunities exist for the private sector to partner with the county in addressing Hillsborough's most pressing issues?
I think that there's opportunities for a better partnership between, especially when you talk about developers and the housing crisis that's largely been created by mismanagement of the government, and then now the government wants to act like they're going to be the ones to save you from the issue that they themselves created. I think that there could be a more open and honest conversation, streamlining development processes, ensuring that if we have a neighborhood going up, that if it's going to take them 3 years to purchase the land, grade the land, zone the land, build the housing, and then sell the house, that we create a process that protects taxpayers, but also works in line to launch infrastructure to be open at the exact same time that that housing is opened, and not 2 years later when you have created intersections that cause unnecessary accidents, loss of life, injury, and costs to the families of Hillsborough County. So I think that a more open and transparent process with land use, zoning, et cetera, with developers could improve what's going on the east and south side of the county.
Thank you, Joshua. And Commissioner, in your view, what opportunities exist for the private sector to partner with the county in addressing Hillsborough's most pressing issues?
Actually, there's a lot of opportunity, and we are doing that now. The efforts that I put forth in the area of affordable housing give many of the developers an opportunity that are now working with us. Expedited processing, we're able to turn around homes and the development of homes in record time that we didn't do before. The challenge we have is we have entitlements that are like 20 years old that we're having to unwind the challenges that come with that. So we may have a project that has entitlements that it will exceed where we'd like to go, with very little or no resources for the infrastructure around it that we have to plan for. The good news is many of the developers we're working with now understand that. They are building smarter communities. They are providing great opportunities for rapid improvement. For example, we expedite permitting application and the entire process when it's affordable housing in order to get those properties developed and available for housing as rapid as possible. But there are also all kinds of other opportunities. We're working with, for example, Future Career Academy about making sure that kids in high school in their senior year have an opportunity to see what jobs are out there, what kinds of workforce opportunities there are, and to make sure that they have an opportunity in seeing where they can support themselves and their family. So it's a combination of working with private enterprise as well as our local agencies, such as our school board and Career Source, for making sure that we're connecting those jobs and those families and that workforce with opportunities to partner with the county for making sure we build strong communities.
Thank you both. We appreciate that information. One more substantive question and a couple of wrap-ups. This issue of equity is important to our board and to our community. The growth in Hillsborough County has been explosive, and many are concerned that some historically marginalized communities are being left behind again. As you both know, the county recently commissioned a community equity profile. What do you see as some of the major themes and some of the opportunities of this report? And Commissioner, I'll come to you to start.
I am so glad you asked that question, because I led that effort to bring the equity profile work and the report that was done recently. I started that in 19, the pandemic kind of got in the way. We were able to bring it back to the board and have started the process of adopting policies that actually create equity in our community. A good example of that is creating an equity lens when we're investing in our community. When we were making the decision to invest part of our ARPA dollars, or American Rescue Plan dollars, in sidewalks, I pushed back on that funding because where those sidewalk projects were being presented were not in areas that had been disproportionately impacted by the impact of the pandemic. They were in areas that were actually in pretty good shape that we had invested in the past, but still had problems, but where there was still support in those communities. So when the project came back, I did approve it and did vote for it, because we looked at it from a lens and made sure we redirected the same dollars into communities that actually had been underappreciated, underinvested, and had been impacted by the pandemic at a greater rate. That's what the equity profile that I push forward and the policies that I've pushed forward are doing in terms of how we're investing in communities. Doesn't mean we can fix every wrong that's been done in the past, but it does mean we can actually make sure that there's an opportunity for everyone in our community to benefit, and use that as a lens for making sure that when we invest, that we're taking care of all of our residents and not just some.
Thank you, Commissioner. And so I'll restate that question again for you, Joshua, and then come to you. Again, the growth in Hillsborough County has been explosive, and many are concerned that some historically marginalized communities are being left behind again. The county recently commissioned the community equity profile. What do you see as some of the major themes and some of the major opportunities of that report?
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Have you had an opportunity to read the profile yet?
I've not read the profile myself, Joshua.
Okay, I'm just curious. I will be very clear about anything that has to do with equity. I appreciate what it attempts to do. If you've read this equity profile study, very specific things about it point to the ever engaging problem of anything that has to do with creating a protected class. And that says that in the finding they found they wanted to see what percentage of homes were owned by different groups of people, and that they found out that unfortunately they didn't find out that it was white people that own the most percentage of homes. They actually found out that it is a minority group that owns the most percentage of homes in Hillsborough County, the Asian community. And then they actually turn around and say, but we're not going to look at that because white people still own more homes than black people. It's basically saying, hey, the findings that we found didn't support our narrative, so we're going to openly ignore them and still go after what these studies ultimately do, which is try to create more of a rift and divide between the white and black communities. What they state as being equity turns out to being a divisive tool that doesn't ultimately help those most marginalized communities that have been negatively impacted by 60 years of failed Lyndon B. Johnson policies, that now you have multi-generational welfare state that they're depending on the government over and over. It's what's always unfortunately happened when I think well-intentioned programs have the worst outcomes, which is very typical of a government policy. It then goes on to say that they studied Hillsborough County, that they found that they wanted to see where we were in terms of people moving themselves out of poverty. They found out that we actually perform. Everyone should be happy about this. They said that Hillsborough County outperformed like all of the next 20 indicating counties that they compared ourselves to. But then the study goes on to say, but we're going to ignore that because we didn't improve and grow how we thought that we should. And I think that for them to go around and implode the cost of government, if you go and look at the people that created these equity lenses, San Francisco, the actual doctors that wrote them now have turned around and said, hey, we thought that we were working on something good. It turned out to have the worst outcome for those minority communities that we were attempting to help, and that they should be denounced. And unfortunately, here we are, 20 years after the curve, we're going to implement them and further negatively impact those communities. I think that you need to have targetable, actionable community improvement districts that are well defined. And within those community improvement districts, you have community improvement agreements that say, okay, we're going to fix item A. After we fix item A, we move on to item B. It's like a contract that you can actually hold the local government accountable to.
Clearly an area of differing perspective. And thank you for highlighting that, both of you, and highlighting that for our chamber members and for those that will be viewing this. We've got a couple of wrap-up questions, and one of those is going to be just sort of a closing statement. But first, where can voters go to learn more about your campaign and your position on the issues most important to them? And Joshua, will come to you first. Where can voters go to learn more about your campaign and your position on issues most important to them?
Yeah, you can go to joshuawostal.com. You'll find a full bio. You'll see some other page links that say the boring budget guy. You'll be able to read more about my issues with the county's budget and spending agenda, and then 3 hyperlinked pages of all 3 of my most important issues in Hillsborough County. That's joshuawostal.com.
Thank you, sir. And Commissioner, where can voters go to learn more about your campaign and your position on issues most important to them?
Thank you. My website is kimberleyoverman.com. I also have a social media page, reelectkimberleyoverman.com, and Twitter page as well. But majority of the information you're going to find in the work that I've done. You do a search for on the website at the hillsborocounty.org, and you'll find the majority of the work that I've done over the last 4 years as the chair of the Board of County Commission, and the experience that I bring to the table in terms of the leadership on each of the boards that I serve. That's probably the best place to learn is at the county, but the website is very, very helpful to give you some focus on the things that I'm doing. And on the website, you'll find an email address as well as contact information to be able to call to find out exactly the answers to any questions that voters may have when they're making a decision in October and November for early voting and vote by mail.
Thank you, Commissioner. And so as we wrap up, obviously we touched on several critical policies. Before we close this out, are there priorities or thoughts that you have that you didn't discuss, that we didn't ask about, or something you'd like to reemphasize? And Commissioner, I'll come to you first.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to participate today. You know, part of being a county commissioner is that you're making decisions every single day that impact residents within the community at a greater rate than, say, a state or a federal leader does. We invest in infrastructure. We invest and partner with the school systems. We don't make school decisions, but they have their own board, but we do partner with the schools in terms of how things get done. We provide the social network and the social safety nets for individuals that have experienced great difficulties. We invest in roads and water and sewer and solid waste. And we make sure that your sheriffs and your fire men and women are able to show up when you need them. They are the largest part of our overall budget. And we have developed a balanced budget. Our budget balance is balanced. We do have a funding deficit when it comes to transportation and infrastructure, but our budget is very balanced. It is very transparent. And we partner with our communities and our business entities in trying to make sure that we're doing the things that need to be done. That's what it takes. As the chair of the Board of County Commission, I've shown leadership. I've been able to work with my 6 other colleagues in order to come with some very tough decisions to manage a pandemic, as well as to support businesses over the long haul, to make sure that they were able to survive through a very difficult economic time. And we are very aware that inflation is playing a tough place in people's lives, but it'll be even tougher if we're not able to invest in our infrastructure. And that's part of the reason why we made the courageous effort to bring back to the voters that was approved in 2018, a plan for investing in our future and to make sure that families can actually get where they need to go and businesses can get their employees where they need to go and live in a live, work, play community that is strong and resilient in our environment and otherwise. So I look forward to leading another 4 years. Much of my agenda is still in the works. And I'm looking forward to serving the residents of Hillsborough County because I actually do love this job.
Commissioner, thank you. Joshua, to restate that question for you as we wrap up, we've touched on several critical policies today. Before we wrap up, are there priorities you think we didn't discuss or something you'd like to reemphasize?
Yeah, I think that we can all agree that there are room for improvements and there are specific groups of communities within Hillsborough County that need a little bit more help to reconcile some of the infrastructure challenges and issues that they have within their area. But I think that some of the things that were said today fully prove my point of having too much government being an issue. Some things about housing for service industry workers were commented on. And during the past 2 years, this is the common tell of a politician who created policies and went after policies, directly said that they wanted to attack service-based workers and find those businesses. And then a year later, they want to turn around after they created and contributed to a problem. They want to act as the political savior for the very problem that created. I think that is a tell of making sure that we have restricted government not having so much power and having a quote unquote agenda over the business community. I think too much power is held at the county, and a lot of it needs to be relied on at these local chamber levels, which we have about a dozen chambers throughout Hillsborough County because it's so big. We must fight for a smaller controlled government in Hillsborough County, one that has excessively mismanaged the Hillsborough County's taxpayers' dollars for the past 40 years that we've been a chartered county. That's how we fix the issues.
Thank you, Joshua, for your perspective. Commissioner, thank you for joining. Again, both candidates running in the November general election, Commissioner Kimberley Overman and Joshua Wostal. And I think you would both join me in agreeing that we want to encourage everyone that's a Hillsborough voter to get out and vote, whether they do that early, whether they do it via mail or absentee, or whether they go on election day. Casting your vote is making your choice. And so we would join all in encouraging that. Again, to both of you, on behalf of the Chamber's members, on behalf of our board of directors, we want to thank you for joining us today. And we want to thank both of you for your willingness to run a campaign and your willingness to serve an elected office. We're grateful. This concludes our candidate forum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.